Hey mamas, this is Playfully Faithful Parenting, and I'm your host, Joy Wendling. I'm a seminary grad and children's and family minister turned stay-at-home mom to my 5 girls. Spiritual parenting is my calling, and it's my passion to help other mamas disciple their kids using the power of play and their own authentic daily walk with Christ. If you're a mama who wants to introduce your kids to Jesus and watch as the Holy Spirit transforms their lives, this is the place for you. I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in and see how we can partner with God today. Hello and welcome to Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'm your host, Joy, and I am so excited to share this interview with you today. I get to speak to one of my ministry friends from over 10 years ago. We started working together in a network of children's ministry directors in the Pacific Northwest and Presbyterian churches. And she is now the executive director for the Godly Play Foundation. And she just has some really beautiful ways to think about children's ministry and parenting our kids for a relationship with God and their faith and all of these things. She has her PhD and it's she was studying children's spiritual formation. And so she's just got some really beautiful, profound, deep thoughts to share with us. And so I'm so excited. It is a little longer than normal, but I think it will be well worth it. So please enjoy this interview. Hello. I'm so excited to have Heather on Playfully Faithful Parenting today. Heather and I met over 10 years ago when we were both children's ministry directors in Presbyterian churches. And so I'm excited to have her on the show today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Joy. Thank you. It's really great to have this opportunity to connect with you in this way. So I am Heather Ingersoll. I live in the Portland, Oregon area. I have spent over really the last 20 years deep in work, both academic work and practical work, supporting the spiritual lives of children. And that included everything from directing children's ministry programs at various churches to leading early childhood programs to teaching in college and university classes. And I currently serve as the executive director for the Godly Play Foundation. I'm just over a year in that position, and that really brings together my love for academics and the research piece of children's spirituality and sort of the practical implications of that. I also have 2 sons, Theo, who is currently in kindergarten, and Aidan, who is 2 years old. So that's a big part of my work in children's spirituality right now.
Absolutely. And I have always been so jealous of all of your academic career, and I'm so excited to see you getting to serve in a role like this. I think it's really exciting for both you and for our world and kids who get to be blessed by godly play in those families and churches. So thank you. And thanks again for being here. So here on Playfully Faithful Parenting, we define spiritual parenting as living out your authentic faith in front of your kids and inviting them to get to know who God is. We do this based on Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9. So what does Christian or spiritual parenting mean to you, and what's it look like in your family?
Yeah, I love that way of sort of framing it, particularly coming out of living out your authentic faith within the experiences you have with your children. I might I would take what you have and reframe it a bit to kind of share what my definition and the way I live that out looks like. I really see it as an opportunity to help children identify the God that they already know, that's a part of who they are, that created them to be who they are, and recognizing God within the midst of their everyday lives and experiences, and their growth as they are learning who they are, what their relationships look like, what it means to experience community and people who are different, and their interests. And so for me, a lot of we don't have significant intentional practices that we do as a family, but I really see it embedded in the way that we engage with our children on a regular basis, through a lot of creative play, a lot of connecting different experiences they have in the world with what questions they might have about life and death and God and what happens when we die. There's so much out in the world that will trigger that. And so it's really, really a way of providing space and experiences for children to experience the world and invite them to think about that through a lens of who they are and who God has created them to be and how God has created the world. So yeah, that's a big part of sort of what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things you said has really got me challenged and thinking, because you said, recognizing the God that they already know. And I talk a lot about introducing our kids to God and to Jesus. And I mean, but in my core, I know that they already know him and that they've already been able to communicate with him. And, as babies crying out to the one who created them. And, and so using that word recognize instead of introduce is like, I've got chills right now, just thinking about it. And that, just that one little word changing, but it's what I've always believed already, just didn't express it in that way. And I just think that's really profound and beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for naming that. I think we're sort of some of the language that we use in the church, I don't think actually speaks to our own really understanding of who children are, particularly as parents, as you watch them become their own beings and realize that so much of parenting is really giving them space and support within their becoming of who they are. And so, so sometimes it just takes a reframing, I think, of the language that we often use and have been used to using in the church to kind of really speak to what we actually believe about who children are and what our role in their faith lives can be.
Yes, absolutely. I just within the last couple of weeks was sharing on the podcast about Proverbs 22:6 and, directing our children on the way they should go, and how that really as a parent can challenge us to not just be one parent, but a different parent to each child. And that we shouldn't have our kids try to fit the mold of what our faith looks like, but that we can, as the more mature Christian, explore different spiritual practices that our kids may align with better or experience God more fully than we do. And instead of asking them to always fit into, our own favorite spiritual disciplines, finding and exploring ways for them to live, more in line with who Christ created them to be, as opposed to just us.
Yeah. So true. True.
So I'm just still processing this word change. In godly place, which some of our people some of my listeners may not have heard of, but one of the words is play. So before we get to godly play, I'd love to hear about play and its role in your own personal, like your family and your family's faith.
Yeah. As someone who spent a lot of time in early childhood education as well, our family has always valued play as a significant piece of how we spend our time, what we do as a family. And, I think there are a variety of ways that word comes with different definitions from our own experiences. So I'm just gonna kind of talk through maybe when I say play, what I mean and then I can share kind of what that might look like for our family. So one piece of play is really that it's autonomy based. So the child it's child led in a sense, like it's, or if it's our own play, it's us led, like it's out of our own intrinsic desires of what we want to do in the moment. And then that brings along some intrinsic motivation. So it's something that you're doing because you just love to do it, or you get in the flow is one term that's used. Immersed in the moment, that's another term. Spontaneous. So we are not a family who does a lot of planning around like, we're going to do these activities today. It's really very based on, it might be like, we're going to spend this certain amount of time outside, or we're going to spend this certain amount of time at this park. But as far as the play that comes out of those spaces and experiences, that's really really spontaneous, unless, often it'll be, actually, this is something we're doing today. My son was introduced to friendship bracelets. I think he saw a video of a way to make friendship bracelets that, a 6-year-old could do. And so after this podcast, we're going to run to the store and get some materials, and he's going to start making friendship bracelets. That was not on my list of things I wanted, make sure Theo learns to make friendship bracelets, but I love it and I'm excited. So, that's a lot of how we shape our days. And then, that it's enjoyable. So enjoyable, not just in the act of what we're doing, but that we bring a level of playfulness and kind of in our heart and spirit to what we're doing. Children are really good at leading us in that part of it. So sometimes I have to do a fake it till you make it when it comes to certain play that I'm not really getting into with them, but really just allowing myself to engage with the joy that's emanating from them. So an example of what play often looks like in our family, we have a gorgeous sunny day today, which we haven't had a lot of recently. So we spent some time outside this morning, and my son decided he wanted to make a house. We have this little forest area in front of our house. So it was very, so he's like, how do we make a house? And I was, throwing out some ideas. Well, we have some sticks, we have some pine cones. So eventually it was really, me giving him some ideas, pointing to things that were in our environment, but not really telling him how we might do it. So it turned out to be, there was a door, but sticks lined kind of in between trees to make our house. He made a little wood stove that we were cooking food on, and he went and picked berries and got some meat, made a bow and arrow out of sticks that we found. So and then our 2-year-old kind of eventually jumped in and kept asking, where's the door? Where's the door? Because if we walk one way, you're walking through the wall. So Theo would be like, wait, you're walking through the wall. So he'd ask where the door was. And then he started picking berries and bringing me pine cones that were his berries. So that was something we started today. I imagine we'll get out there and play in that again. And, I think often when we're playing in ways like that, things will come up about, this didn't get, but it could, something about killing animals, because he was hunting for animals, and, conversations like that. This type of play allows for children to kind of authentically engage with the world and creation and ask bigger questions about creation, and us to kind of wonder together about that. So yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like.
Yes, I love that. Definitely not something my girls would do. Yeah. So little boy mom, but but very Pacific Northwest style of
It's
play.
true.
I love it. How fun.
Yeah.
So now tell us some about, how about introduce the audience to Godly Play and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Godly Play, I was introduced to Godly Play when I first started in children's ministry. And it's really an approach to Christian education, religious education with children. And there's a published curriculum that you can purchase, and but it's really more than just a curriculum. It's really a way of being with children and a specific approach of how we're inviting children to name and explore their experiences with God, as we've sort of talked about, of the God they already know. So in general, Godly Play has been used in churches and schools, and also in hospitals, children's hospitals. Chaplains will use Godly Play. And we have several components. The first component is story, and we began with story that is, most of the stories are stories from the Bible. We have some saint stories, and some liturgical stories, but mostly from the Bible. They're told with a very poetic script, I guess you could use to describe it, and told with nature-based materials. So the children hear this story and watch the materials kind of play out the story. And then the second piece to that is a wondering time. And the wondering time is an opportunity for children to wonder about the story in whatever way they do. So we often invite them to wonder through prompts like, I wonder what part of the story you like best, or I wonder where you are in the story. I wonder what part of the story is the most important. And one that can get kids really thinking, I wonder if there's any part of the story that we could leave out and still have all the story we need. And the role of the adult in the room is to provide a safe place for children to wonder, and not to qualify their answers, but just to invite them to sit with them, and perhaps even invite more discussion around what the children are wondering. So Godly Play is really about inviting children to think deeply about the story and how it's connecting with them in that particular day and particular moment, without telling them what to take away from the story. And then the next piece is a response time, and this is our play time, really play that we say is like children's work, essentially. So we have Godly Play spaces have tons of open-ended materials, and children really get to using that framework for play. So spontaneous, and it's child-directed, and it's enjoyable. We really let them use the materials to engage in whatever way they want. And sometimes you can see the connection between the story and what the children are doing, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're surprised because the child will articulate what perhaps brought them to respond in the way they did. And other times, they may be working out something that we don't even know. So again, that it's very child-directed. The adult in the room is not telling them what to do or what they need to produce, but really inviting them to respond in whatever way they want. And then finally, we end with the feast, which is often like the snack time in Sunday school, but it's really designed as an opportunity for children to be together, to build relationships, to be in a circle and eat together. And then we end with a blessing. So that's sort of the framework of what a Godly Play session looks like.
And could you tell us just a few examples of like what some of the response materials might be?
Yeah, oh goodness, there's so many. So definitely, like the staples of crayons, markers. I loved some of the things that I found kids loved, like not just Play-Doh, but like real molding clay. You would use that, clay that it would harden and they could then paint later on. Easels and paint, ribbons, pom-poms, all the art, all the open-ended art things you could imagine. And it really depends on the ages too, recognizing that for some kids, they like a little more structure. So sometimes you might have Like we tell a story that the circle of the church year. So it's essentially the liturgical year sort of laid out in a circle. So we might have like a coloring page, but it's really an opportunity for them to recreate the circle of the church year for those children who like a little more structure. And then we have our storytelling materials, which are all wooden, all natural materials, and children can also use those for any story that they've heard. They can use those materials to kind of retell the story or rework the story. Yeah, I mean, I can't like think of any unique fun things. We just got a boogie board for my 6-year-old, and it's really fun. I was like, oh, if I was in a godly play classroom, I would buy some of those. Yeah. So those are some examples.
Just asking because I think that's one of the easiest ways for families to bring this idea of godly play home and to, share, give your kids at home, that open response time. I have an episode from a couple months ago talking about crafts versus art and process versus product art, and just how when we give our kids the creativity to do what they feel led to, that they can better respond to, stories and think about it and express their own connection to God and Jesus from that story, as opposed to, well, we read a story about fishes and loaves, and so now here's a picture of a fish and you can color it. Like, and so where a kid might say, oh, I'm going to be creative and use 3 colors on the fish, and so just, I love the response time that we used godly play at one of the churches that I served at. And we did, we were just introducing it while I was there. And so we did it once a month. And, but I loved that response time and that open-ended ability, kids had to respond in a way that was bigger than a planned craft.
Yeah. And I think your question is really important because, one of the sort of bedrocks of godly play is creating the environment to allow children to create. And sometimes just having the right materials can do that. Theo, the other day, we used to do creation station. So I would just get a paper bag, and just throw like random cardboard boxes and recyclables and like tape and whatnot. And the other day he just said, can we do creation station again? Because we haven't done it in a while. And it's amazing what he comes up with when we just, and it's, put in a little, we don't have a space where we have like this beautiful art room for our children at our house. So it's like, throw it in a paper bag, here you go. And he finds a little spot on his carpet to create whatever he creates. And yeah, sometimes it's just giving them the tools to explore their environment. And
absolutely. And I think like at home we can also say, here's your Legos or your Magnetiles, like, use these to tell me what you heard in the story, or show me what, where you would be in the story. And I think, and your questions as well, the wondering time is another thing that is easy for us to glean from, this godly play curriculum and bring home and ask our kids those open-ended questions. I think it's so important for us as parents to model that we have questions too, and then, but also to allow them to ask, to think deeply, but also funny questions and silly questions. I've asked my kids after reading a story, do you think, the disciples and Jesus are walking around in sandals and he's washing their feet? Do you think that their feet smelled? Like, I wonder, did the disciples have smelly feet? And I think those wondering questions where we show our kids that we have, we don't know it all, and that it's safe place to ask those, silly or deep questions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. I've started trying this. A godly play trainer talked recently about using those sort of typical prompts. We have different wondering for different questions, but those 4 are, or for different stories. Those 4 are often used as for reflecting on the day. So I've started to do that with Theo versus the like, how was your day? Which is, comes out of my mouth just naturally all the time. And it's just usually like, good. But when I reframe it and say, I wonder what part of your day was your favorite, it's amazing. It just, whatever, because of the reframing of that question, he talks more and I hear more about his day. And actually, just this week, that led him to say something about, he's in a Spanish immersion class. So he liked that his teacher was out of class because they had a substitute. So they got to speak more English during the day. But it led to him saying, so I was like, oh yeah, your teacher's been gone for quite a while. And he just said, yeah, I'm kind of worried she's going to die. And it led to like, I don't think he would have told me that, I would have never have guessed that he was thinking that. So it led to a really good opportunity just for us to like wonder about that and talk about that and talk about what he was feeling. And yeah, so it's surprising how a shift of language can really engage children in a different.
Absolutely, yes. Are there other ways that you can offer us to bring the kind of godly play style home?
I think overall, I would say the philosophy, kind of doing some of your own exploration of, the why behind any angst or impetus you may feel around the faith of your children and like what you really hope for them. And I think like as we talk, sometimes I think that's so framed within our experience of church that we haven't really identified for ourselves what our actual hopes for our children are. And so wonder about that and maybe and spend some time wondering on your own, where have you seen your child experience and explore and name the God they already know. I think sometimes it's just an awareness and it looks different for different kids. And in doing that, I think you can even offer opportunities for them to go deeper into what that might be. So my 6-year-old, dramatic play is huge for him. So my 2-year-old, I don't think it will be the same for him. So I'd say take your cues from the child, and a final thing I would say is one piece of the godly play sort of philosophy and training that we do for storytellers is to be a non-anxious presence. Particularly when questions come up about existential issues like death and big questions that children have about God that we may feel anxious about, being that non-anxious presence that kind of doesn't give an answer that to just satisfy what they're asking, but shows them in that presence that it's something bigger than we can really articulate in language. So I love that when that phrase, being a non-anxious presence, rolls through my mind quite a bit in parenting often. So yeah.
Yes, that might be another place where we sometimes have to fake it till we make it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a lot of internal work.
Yes.
There's another saying, we have all of the time we need, that we say in godly play. And when I'm feeling stressed at home, my husband will remind me, or when I'm, okay, this play has gone, we gotta go, let's change what we're doing. He always is like, we have all the time we need.
So if my listeners would like to know more about godly play, where do you want to direct them?
Godlyplayfoundation.org is our website, and it gives a good overview of our work. Most of our work has been focused on churches and schools and organizations, but we have a component, a book and some materials for doing, essentially we call stories of God at home. And we're also building out some more accessible opportunities for parents to take this home with them who may not be in a church that uses godly play but are really interested in it. So our website is really the best place to find that information. And then my email address, heather@godlyplayfoundation.org. I'm always happy to talk to anyone interested in learning more.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been such a deep and beautiful conversation, and I just really hope that it blesses and encourages all my listeners. And again, just thank you so much for being here and taking time away from your family to join us and go and enjoy some bracelet making.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, mamas, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'd love to keep the conversation going over on the socials. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you felt encouraged or equipped by today's show, do me a favor and leave a review. I can't wait to hear your story. Till next week, keep playing and pointing those littles to Christ.